Rain hammered against the glass walls of the 32nd floor. The office of Morrison Global Holdings was nearly empty, except for the cleaning staff and one exhausted man staring at a spreadsheet that refused to balance. Daniel Brooks rubbed his tired eyes and checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Too late. Way too late. His 7-year-old daughter Lily was probably asleep on the couch again, waiting for him with cartoons still running and half-finished homework spread across the table. Guilt twisted in his chest. But guilt didn't pay rent. And after medical bills swallowed everything his late wife had left behind, Daniel had learned one brutal truth. Poor people don't get to rest. The thunder outside shook the windows. Daniel saved the final report and quickly packed his worn laptop into a faded backpack stitched twice at the corners. He turned off the office lights and headed toward the elevators. That's when he heard heels clicking behind him. Sharp, fast, unsteady. He turned, and froze. Victoria Hale, the CEO, the woman employees called, the Ice Queen, behind her back. She was terrifying in boardrooms, ruthless in negotiations, and famous for firing executives without blinking. Her face appeared in magazines beside headlines about billion-dollar mergers and impossible success stories. Nobody talked to her unless spoken to first. Nobody. Yet now she stood alone in the hallway, soaked from rain, one hand pressed against the wall like she could barely stay upright. Her mascara was slightly smudged. That alone shocked Daniel more than anything. Victoria Hale never looked imperfect. She stared at him with eyes colder than winter, but tonight something else hid beneath them. Fear. Brooks, she whispered. Daniel straightened immediately. Ma'am. She took a shaky breath. Then came the sentence that would change his life forever. Take me home, she said quietly. Or you're fired. Daniel blinked. What? You heard me. Her voice cracked slightly. That terrified him even more. Because powerful people only whispered when something was truly wrong. I can call your driver, Daniel offered carefully. No, her answer came instantly. No driver, no security, no assistance, just you. The elevator doors opened beside them with a soft ding. Victoria stepped inside, then looked directly at him. If you leave me here tonight, she said softly, I won't survive it. The doors began closing. Daniel moved before his brain caught up. He stepped inside, and suddenly wished he hadn't. The ride down felt endless. Victoria leaned silently against the elevator wall, breathing unevenly. Daniel kept his eyes forward. This was insane. Completely insane. He was an underpaid financial analyst with overdue bills and a dying car that coughed smoke every morning. She was one of the most powerful women in the country. People like her didn't ask people like him for help. Unless something terrible had happened. Outside, rain flooded the streets in silver rivers. Daniel unlocked his old sedan and immediately regretted it. The passenger door only opened from the inside. The heater barely worked, and the dashboard lights flickered like a dying Christmas tree. Victoria stared at the car for a long moment. Daniel braced for disgust. Instead, she quietly climbed in. Address? He asked. She gave it. Daniel nearly choked. The richest neighborhood in the city. Of course. He started driving. For several minutes, only rain filled the silence. Then Victoria suddenly spoke. Do you have children? Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel. One daughter. How old? 7. What's her name? Lily. Victoria nodded slowly like the name hurt her somehow. She waits up for you, doesn't she? Daniel glanced sideways. How did you know? Because children always wait for the people they love. Something heavy filled the car after that. Daniel noticed her hands trembling. Not slightly, violently, like she was holding herself together by force. You okay? He asked cautiously. No. The honesty startled him. Most rich people hid weakness like a crime. But Victoria looked exhausted beyond pretending. Streetlights flashed across her face. And suddenly Daniel noticed something else. Bruises. Faint. Near her wrist. His stomach tightened. Before he could stop himself, he said quietly, Did someone hurt you? Victoria's eyes snapped toward him. Ice cold again. Drive. He immediately shut up. But the silence now felt dangerous. When they reached the gated mansion 20 minutes later, Daniel whistled internally. The place looked less like a home and more like a private museum. Tall iron gates, massive fountains, security cameras everywhere, yet oddly, no lights inside. Victoria didn't move after he parked. She simply stared at the dark mansion. And for the first time since meeting her, Daniel saw something shocking on her face. Terror. You don't want to go in, he realized quietly. Her jaw tightened. Then her phone buzzed. One message. She read it. All color vanished from her face. Daniel caught only a glimpse. Where are you? 3 dots appeared immediately after. Then another message. You can't ignore me forever. Victoria locked the phone instantly. But Daniel had already seen enough. A cold feeling crawled up his spine. That's your husband? He asked carefully. She laughed once. A broken sound. Unfortunately, another text appeared. Get inside. Now. Daniel swallowed hard. You don't have to go in there tonight. Victoria slowly turned toward him. You think I'm afraid of my husband? I think, Daniel said carefully, you look like someone asking for help without saying the words. For several seconds she just stared at him. Then suddenly, her composure shattered. Not loudly, not dramatically. One tear rolled silently down her face. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. Daniel froze. Powerful people weren't supposed to break. Yet here sat the woman who terrified boardrooms, trembling like she might fall apart completely. And somehow, against all logic, Daniel understood exactly what loneliness looked like. Because he wore it too. My daughter's home alone, he said quietly. But, if you need somewhere safe for tonight. Victoria looked stunned. You're inviting me into your home. It's not much. You barely know me. Daniel stared at the mansion again. Then at the bruise on her wrist. Sometimes, he said softly, you know enough. The rain kept falling as Victoria made the impossible choice. She nodded once, and the CEO abandoned her mansion for the tiny apartment of a poor single father. Daniel spent the drive home panicking internally. What was he doing? If anyone found out, office gossip alone could destroy his career. But every time he considered turning back, he remembered the fear in Victoria's eyes. That wasn't stress. That wasn't exhaustion. That was survival. When they reached his apartment building, Victoria looked out the window in silence. The neighborhood was old, paint peeled from the walls. The elevator hadn't worked in months. A neon sign from the laundromat flickered across cracked pavement. Daniel suddenly felt embarrassed. This is temporary, he muttered. After my wife passed, medical debt kind of. You don't owe me explanations, Victoria interrupted softly. Inside, the apartment was tiny but warm. Cartoons played quietly from the television. And there, curled on the couch beneath a pink blanket, slept Lily. One small hand still held a crayon. Daniel's heart broke instantly. She waited again, he whispered. Victoria stared at the little girl for a long moment. Something, in her expression changed, softened. Daniel carefully lifted Lily into his arms. The little girl stirred sleepily. Daddy, I'm here, Peanut. Her eyes half opened. Then she spotted Victoria. Who's that? Daniel hesitated. Before he could answer, Victoria stepped forward gently. I'm a friend from your daddy's work. Lily blinked. You look sad. Daniel nearly died of embarrassment. But Victoria just stared at the child. Then something extraordinary happened. She smiled. A real smile. Small, fragile, but real. I am a little sad, she admitted. Lily immediately held out her stuffed rabbit. Mr. Buttons helps me when I'm sad. Victoria looked genuinely shocked. You're giving this to me? Only for tonight. For the first time in years, Victoria Hale looked completely speechless. She accepted the rabbit carefully like it was made of glass. And Daniel realized something terrifying. This woman had probably spent her whole life surrounded by luxury. And completely starved of kindness. Later that night, after Lily was asleep again, Daniel made coffee in the kitchen while Victoria sat silently at the small table. Rain tapped softly against the windows. You should tell someone, Daniel finally said. About what? The bruises. Victoria's eyes hardened instantly. You think I'm weak? No, Daniel answered. I think you're exhausted from pretending to be strong. That hit harder than he expected. Because Victoria suddenly looked away. My husband wasn't always like this, she whispered. Before the company became worth billions, before the interviews and cameras and expectations. She stopped. Daniel waited. He loved me once. People always imagined powerful women had perfect lives. Money, control, success. But Payne didn't care about bank accounts. Why stay? Daniel asked quietly. Victoria laughed bitterly. You know what headlines would say. Brilliant CEO can manage billion-dollar corporations but failed her marriage. Investors would panic. Board members would smell weakness. So you sacrifice yourself to protect your image? No. She looked at him with hollow eyes. I sacrificed myself because eventually you stopped believing you deserve better. Daniel felt that sentence deep in his bones. Because after his wife died, part of him had stopped believing life could ever improve too. Suddenly Victoria looked around the apartment. At the second-hand furniture, the tiny kitchen, the unpaid bills stacked beside the microwave. Yet somehow, the place still felt alive. How are you still kind? she asked quietly. Daniel frowned. What? You've lost so much. You work non-stop. You struggle every day. Most people become bitter. Daniel glanced toward Lily's room. Because my daughter's watching. Silence. Heavy silence. Victoria looked like she might cry again. Then her phone rang. The sound sliced through the apartment. Her face drained when she saw the caller. Don't answer, Daniel said immediately. He'll come looking. Let him. You don't understand who he is. No, Daniel said firmly. You don't understand who you are. Victoria stared at him, and suddenly the walls around her cracked completely. I'm scared, she whispered. 3 words. Tiny. Broken. Human. Daniel moved before thinking. He sat beside her carefully. Not touching. Just present. You're safe tonight, he said quietly. For the first time in years, Victoria believed someone. At 3,